Do courts make awards in divorce to punish adultery? Great question. Adultery is considered a fault-based ground for divorce and a factor that can be considered when the trial court decides matters of alimony, property division, and child custody. I will answer your question according to what Utah statutory and case law provides. Utah Code Section 30-3-5 sub 9c states that fault includes engaging in sexual relations with an individual other than the party's spouse if such wrongful conduct during the marriage that substantially contributed to the breakup of the marriage relationship. Most recently, the Utah Supreme Court discussed this very question in the divorce case of Gardner versus Gardner. That's 425 Pacific Reporter 3rd, page 1134, decided in 2019. In that decision, the Supreme Court stated, quote, courts should consider fault only in an attempt to balance the equities between the parties. In other words, where one party's fault has harmed the other party, the court may attempt to rebalance the equities by adjusting the alimony award in favor of the party who was harmed by that fault. Additionally, the Supreme Court stated in footnote 56 of the decision, quote, we note that some Utah courts have struggled to articulate an appropriate role of fault in alimony determinations in light of our case law suggesting that the purpose of alimony is not to punish. And it cited the case of Mark versus Mark, volume 223, Pacific Reporter 3rd, page 476, where the Utah Court of Appeals observed, quote, if a trial court uses its broad statutory discretion to consider fault in fashioning an alimony award and then, taking that fault into consideration, adjusts the alimony award upward or downward, it simply cannot be said that fault was not used to punish or reward either spouse by altering the award as a consequence of fault, close quote. But, the court continued, the Supreme Court, continued, other Utah courts have concluded that fault may be considered without constituting punishment if it is used only to rectify the inequity caused by the fault, close quote, and cited the case of Christiansen versus Christiansen, 2003 Utah Appeals Court 348. Quote, fault may correctly be considered by the trial court without penalizing the party found to be at fault, close quote, and cited a line of cases standing for the proposition that, quote, fault may be considered as long as it is used as a basis to prevent or rectify an inequity to the not at fault spouse, close quote. So, the Supreme Court continued, in reviewing an alimony determination involving fault, Utah appellate courts should focus on whether a fault-based modification of an alimony award helped achieve a fair, just, and equitable result between the parties rather than on whether it was punitive in nature, close quote. With this in mind, could a court, not all courts, award alimony, divide marital property unevenly, or restrict custody or parent time due to the spouse's adultery to punish adultery? Yes, of course. Even if the court went to great pains, sincerely or not, to articulate that the alimony decision was not punitive in nature. Some judges, some, not all, allow their personal antipathy for an adulterous spouse to affect their impartiality and to justify disregarding the law in favor of doing what the judge feels is right instead. And yes, it can happen to you. Bottom line, if you are an adulterer, and a serial and or unrepentant adulterer at that, it should come as no surprise to you that your adultery will do you no favors when it comes to the way the court can and may treat you in a divorce action. Fairly or not, that is the nature of the way many people, and judges are people, view and treat adulterers. Does this mean that if you are an adulterer, you should expect to be treated unfairly by a court? No, I think your odds are about 50-50 in my professional opinion. Do these odds mean that you should lie about adultery if you believe you can get away with it? No, and for two reasons. One, it is wrong to lie. And two, if you commit adultery, then compound the problem by lying about it and getting caught, you only increase your odds of being mistreated by the court. And odds are that if you lie about adultery, you will be caught.